Having said that, this is not to say that at the time anyway there was any sort of a permission to do things in a quick and dirty way. In fact, I think quite the opposite. There was a very strong emphasis on achieving the highest level of quality you could, given the limitations of the kinds of practices that were being employed. And there was this phrase at Microsoft that had an almost magical quality called "do the right thing." And you could basically stop a meeting. If people were talking about a design approach in a meeting and somebody was saying, well, let's do this and it involves these trade-offs, somebody else in the meeting could say, hey, look guys, we have to do the right thing here. And do the right thing meant we have to create high-quality software that maintains Microsoft's position in the marketplace, that doesn't mortgage our future, but that is actually a solid, technically respectable way to go about doing this work. And it was, I've noticed this in other organizations too, that different phrases in different organizations, but you'll have a phrase that people will invoke that basically calls people to act on their better impulses. And at Microsoft, in that time frame, do the right thing was that phrase. Sorry?
Spike Lee work there?
I think that was after the movie came out. Chris Peters, who was a rising star and the manager in charge of Excel 3.0, made this very interesting comment after Excel 3.0 came out. When Excel 3.0 was done, it was widely seen within Microsoft as the most successful project Microsoft had done up to that point. On a one-year schedule, it shipped 11 days late, which at the time was the best schedule performance Microsoft had had. And so the lessons learned from Excel 3.0 were packaged up into a video, and this video was circulated widely within Microsoft. Lots of people watched it. Chris Peters went around giving talks about what he'd done on Excel 3, and the project itself was really the test bed for a lot of what are now cornerstone Microsoft practices. It was the first project to use the program manager role. It was the first project to use the 3 milestones, where the first milestone is really just trying to get the concept to stabilize. It was the first project to institutionalize daily builds and take those seriously. So there were a lot of new and lasting practices that were used for the first time on that project. And I think Chris Peters had a really interesting viewpoint on this. He would go around and tell developers, your goal is not to write code. If we could ship products and make all this money without writing any code, we would. Your job is to ship products exactly on time. It doesn't matter whether you're a developer, tester, program manager, product manager, whatever. Everybody's job is the same. That is to ship products. And right after that, Microsoft initiated this program of Ship It Awards, because there had been an ongoing problem at Microsoft with people who were really smart and really good at the technology, basically spending too much time just monkeying around because the technology was so interesting. And culturally, they wanted to put in, this is my reading, I never read anybody say this in public, but I think that the behavior kind of speaks for itself. They really wanted to emphasize, we make money by shipping software. So they created these Ship It Awards that I believe they still are using today, which were really enormous. They're like this big, solid lucite, and symbolically it was pretty clear. This is the most important award you're going to get for shipping software, not for, you know, coming up with a great design, but for shipping. So this focus on the business that they're in was really emphasized. Other attributes of Microsoft in this time frame, prior to working at Microsoft, actually not prior, after working at Microsoft, I went to work for another company in the Puget Sound area and got to see what it was like not to work at Microsoft. And there, for example, if I needed Post-it notes, I did not have a supply of Post-it notes on my floor. I had to go to the floor the supply room is on, and I had to get Post-it notes from the supply room, which was monitored by a supply officer. And I would also have to fill out a form to get Post-it notes, and I would also have to know what my project's budget number was, which was like, how am I supposed to know what my project's budget number is? But that was the way it worked. And in contrast, I think Microsoft was set up with an unbelievable level of operational support, where you had supply rooms on every floor. You just walk down, you get all the floppy diskettes and CDs and magnetic tapes and pens and Post-it notes and so on that you needed, and there's nobody there watching you to see if you take too many of them. If you needed a whiteboard on your wall, you just send an email to a certain email address and say, I'm going to put a Post-it note on my wall where I want my whiteboard, and the next day you come in and there would be a whiteboard on your wall. Same thing for bulletin boards. If you needed your computer repaired, the IT part of Microsoft was set up so they would basically just bring down a different box, and they take your hard disk out of your computer and stick it into a new box, and the whole thing was like 5 minutes and you're up and running again. And that was a level of support I had not seen prior to going to work at Microsoft. The total focus on keeping the technical staff working was in my experience, up to that point, pretty unprecedented. At the same time, there was a very high level of accountability. I like this statement: getting fired is nature's way of telling you that you had the wrong job in the first place. And I think that sort of idea was prevalent at Microsoft. You basically really had to pull your weight. The dedication was extraordinary. One Friday night, I was working a little bit late, and it was about 6 o'clock, and somebody came by and said, "Hey, we're going to go to a movie. You want to go?" I said, "Okay, sure." So we all went out to dinner, went to Bread Robin or something. Then we went to see a movie, and by that time it was like 10:30, and at that point everybody went back to work, because that's what you did at Microsoft in that time frame. You'd go out to a movie on Friday night and you'd go back to work afterwards. There was one woman that I worked with whose mom was worried about her because she was trying to reach her on Christmas Day, and she called her house and she called her boyfriend's house, and finally she found her at the office working on Christmas Day. Her mom felt like that was kind of an odd prioritization, but again, that was just kind of the level of dedication that people had at that time. There was a very interesting story on the OS2 project where Steve Ballmer, who was the head of the OS2, Microsoft side of the OS2 project at that side, went to the team because they were having schedule problems, and he said, what can we do to try to get this thing delivered on time? And the team said, after thinking about it, they didn't ask for bonuses, they didn't ask for a big trip at the end of the project. What they asked for was a washer and dryer installed in the building so that they didn't have to go home to do their laundry. And if you want an example of a dedicated team, a team whose only request when they are offered anything you want is, please make it easier for us to do our laundry, I think that's quite extraordinary, and really speaks to the level of commitment that people were willing to put in that time frame.